Witches and Wizards. This is Professor Rowan, and I'm joined today with Wolfie. As you may have noticed in our Rowan Reads stream, one of the reads was lost. Chapter 20 and 21, The Mirror of Erised, got corrupted, and we couldn't use it. It was completely lost. So we're like, we don't want to have it without it ever read at all, and we have this lovely set, so why don't we just read the chapters together? I mean, we're in lockdown, so we got nothing else to do. So let's do this.
And we decided we'll try something out, see if you guys like it, and we can do other things like this. We had talked about at one point doing a kind of he said, she said review of things we like. We used to do when the Netflix Marvel shows came out.
Like way back.
Way back. We did little reviews. Like we'd do a little, they were all written, but I'd write up something separate from her writing up something.
I would write up something.
And then we'd come together and talk. And so we're thinking about doing that same type of format. If you've ever seen is it Carlin Brothers? Hey, brother.
Yeah.
That's kind of what they originally had started with their review stuff.
With their review stuff way back in the day.
But so we thought about doing that, like individual and then come together. So if you guys are interested, comment.
Let us know.
Let us know. We're just trying something new because, waiting for Legacy to show up and... Yeah.
All right, so...
just so you know, so I'm going to be reading the male parts except...
Milo. I'm going to be reading Milo and all of the stage instruction and the female voices, and Wolfie's going to be reading the male voices.
All the other male voices, yeah.
So Ron, Harry, Professor Dumbledore, all of those.
So forgive me now because I haven't tried accents in a while. So.
Yeah. When last we left our intrepid explorers, Milo and Hannah were in the medical wing. Yes, because the Red Christmas had just happened. Milo had accidentally, on purpose, almost killed Hannah, and she had accidentally, on purpose, almost killed him in return. So, they're in the medical wing being taken care of. It's Christmas break, so not everybody's in the castle. And when we had last left on the last chapter, Ron and Harry were visiting Milo in the hospital wing, but Harry is very distracted. And the last line had ended with, "Last night I saw my parents." So we're taking up from there.
Look, I know people always say you look just like your dad, but with your mom's eyes.
Ron said.
No, it's not what I meant. I actually saw my parents in the mirror. Their parents and their brothers and sisters and the whole family.
Harry told them how, the night before, he'd gone exploring under his cloak of invisibility and discovered the magical mirror in an unused classroom.
Wow.
Ron said, clearly impressed.
That must be some mirror.
Show me, said Milo. Wait, said Hannah. You can't just go gallivanting off. You're supposed to have complete bed rest, remember?
You sound just like Hermione,
Ron muttered. Someone has to, Hannah said defensively. Milo cursed. She was actually right. If he got out of bed, he'd have to come back and stay a whole nother day just to get back to full hit points. I think I'll have to chance it, Milo said. With luck, something that he rarely seemed to have, he wouldn't be needing all of his hit points for at least another day or so. Harry's mirror, however, might not be there tomorrow at all, and frankly, it seemed relatively plot relevant. Let's go find it, Milo said, ignoring Hannah's protests. But first, Harry, put it on your list. That, the power of love, and the imperious curse. Harry shrugged, pulling the small sack of parchment which held the list. Milo had made a note to make a few backups with a pen of plagiarism +5, just in case, out of his school bag and diligently wrote them down. Milo uncomfortably pulled his filthy robe of arcane might over his pajamas. The way things were going recently, he didn't want to waste a prestidigitation to clean it off, There was no telling when he was going to be ambushed next. "All right," he said. "Lead on." Harry, Ron, and Milo strode out of the hospital wing.
"We should hide under the cloak,"
Harry suggested when they were out of earshot of the other patients. "Oh, come on," Milo scoffed. 3 people can't wear 1 magic item. It just can't be done. I know I like to bend the rules sometimes, but seriously, 3 people under 1 cloak? That's a stretch."
"Really?"
Harry asked.
"That's somewhat surprising. It seems large enough to cover all of us. I mean, it was made for an adult, right?"
"Trust me," Milo said authoritatively. "It's patently impossible. It'd be like trying to cast a spell in the same turn as running or drinking 2 potions in a 6-second period. Can't be done. End of story."
"Huh,"
said Harry.
"Go figure. Okay, well, you should wear it then, because you're supposed to still be in the hospital wing."
"Good plan," Milo said, pulling the cloak over his dirty, blood-stained magic robes. "All right, let's go." Harry led them through some unfamiliar Hogwarts corridors, always a rather risky prospect, past a door pretending to be a wall, and once embarrassingly directing into a wall that was pretending to be a door, down a staircase that turns into a ramp if you don't ask it nicely not to, and finally into an old, abandoned classroom. The cloak of invisibility turned out to be unnecessary, as the only person they encountered, if the word person could be applied here, was the Bloody Baron, who, as usual, ignored them completely. In the classroom were cobwebs and thick coating of dust on most of the desks and chairs, except for a wide corridor down the middle, where a number of them had been pushed to the side, presumably to allow persons unknown to carry in the mirror, which sat at the front of the room, where the professor would stand to lecture a class. Milo let out a low whistle. "Now that," he said, "is one hell of a magic-y looking item." The mirror was, for one, huge. Its top nearly touched the ceiling, and Milo couldn't figure out how anyone could possibly have gotten it through the door. The frame was of intricately worked gold, and if it didn't scream magic, nothing did.
"That's the technical term, you figure?"
Ron asked Riley.
"Come on."
Harry said impatiently.
"Sit in front of it and look. It's my mom and dad."
"Whoa, hold there," Milo said. "If there's one thing to learn as an adventurer is you don't go looking in random magic mirrors before finding out exactly what they do."
"But I know what this one does,"
Harry protested.
"It shows my parents."
"Maybe," Milo said cautiously. "I've seen mirrors that create evil copies of anyone who looks at them. Mirrors that suck you in and trap you. Mirrors that blast you forwards in time. Mirrors that switch your mind with the owners. Mirrors that make suggestions you can't refuse."
"My mirror does that,"
Ron interrupted.
"Tell me whether my shirt's untucked, my laces are undone, or there's something in my teeth. And when you ignore it, blimey does it make a fuss. But this mirror doesn't do anything like that."
Harry protested again.
"I looked into it, and I'm fine."
Milo looked at him suspiciously. "How do we know that?" he asked. "Seems awfully suspicious, doesn't it? I mean, if you were possessed by some evil being who placed the mirror here, the first thing you'd do is try to convince others to look at it too, wouldn't you?"
"But I'm not. I'm fine, really. You're just paranoid because of Hannah." "Use protection from weevils,"
Ron suggested.
"Remember, the thing you did on Hannah that made her Hannah again."
"Good thinking. Protection from evil." Milo cast on Harry. The boy who lived was surrounded by a brief glow which faded in a fraction of a second. "Feel any different now?"
"No."
Harry said with an audible edge in his voice.
"Because I wasn't possessed. Can we look at the mirror now, or do you want me to throw you in the water to see if I float first?"
"Why would I?"
"Oh, never mind. Just look at the bloody thing."
"Fine," Milo said. "Ron, you go first." If the mirror did launch some form of attack, Milo figured that, of the 3 of them, he would be the best equipped to deal with it and therefore couldn't afford to be neutralized on the first round. That was his story, and he was sticking to it. Eagerly, Ron stepped towards it and stared at the mirror. Ron gasped, and Milo nearly started raining arcane doom everywhere, before he started speaking again.
Blimey, I'm head boy.
Ron said, astonished.
And I'm holding the Quidditch Cup. I won it. Looks like I'm captain of the team. What?
Harry said.
Let me see that.
Giving Ron a little shove, he positioned himself right in front of the mirror.
No, look, see? It's my mum and dad. They're right there in front of us. Maybe.
Ron said slowly.
But it's different for everyone.
Then his eyes widened.
Do you reckon it shows the future? How can it?
Harry asked.
All my family is dead, remember?
That doesn't really mean anything, Milo said. There's no reason beyond the fact that it would be highly improbable that Ron couldn't be both head boy and Quidditch captain.
But...
And as for your parents, well, there's dozens of ways for my kind of magic to bring back the dead, Milo said slowly.
Right.
Harry said in an odd voice.
I'd forgotten about that.
Perhaps he was an unusually high sense motive roll for once, or Milo's recent confused state, but something told him that Harry was lying and hadn't, in fact, forgotten for a moment that Milo could, one day, limited wish Harry's parents back to life. Well, Milo said eventually, screwing up his courage, I think maybe I should have a go at the mirror. With a fair amount of trepidation, Milo stepped in front of the ornate mirror while trying to avoid thinking of all the various kinds of horrible trapped mirrors out there. Now that he thought about it, he couldn't recall a single magic mirror that didn't have some form of vicious curse. His eyes were still carefully averted, staring at the toes of his adventurer's boots. Why, oh why, did I use my only protection from evil on Harry? Milo berated himself. Steadying himself with deep, calming breaths, Milo forced his eyes to stare directly at the polished silver surface. The universe unveiled itself in front of him, and while, conceptually at least, Milo knew from wizards experimenting with divinations and greater teleport that the distance between stars was inconceivably far, and that the distance between galaxies made even that colossal distance seem completely negligible, Milo could see, clearly, pinpoints of light unfolding before him in numbers so large that they didn't have names. Many of those stars had planets, and many of those planets had moons, and a rare few of those planets and moons had life. Milo saw stout, bearded dwarves bustling about in their mines and forges, not knowing that with every greedy swing of their pick, they unwittingly brought themselves one step closer to their own horrible demise as they approached the horrors which lay beneath them in their underground cities. Milo saw proud elves, comfortable in the fact that they've been toying with the very fabric of the universe and living in shining cities and soaring towers, while the lesser races had yet to discover fire, blind in their arrogance to their ever-waning power, numbers, and relevance to the world outside of their sequestered paradises. Milo saw humans beyond number, living their lives, tilling soil, and always expanding outwards, propelled by their adventurous spirit and search for excitement, not knowing what was in store for them when they found there nowhere else to discover. Milo saw Akings, centaurs, chimera, dragons, gnomes, halflings, half-elves, aquatic elves, wood elves, dark elves, high elves, gray elves, wild elves, wood elves, orcs, goblins, hobgoblins, bugbears, half-orcs, magmen, barg beasts, blink dogs, dinosaurs, dire animals, ghosts, and ghouls, oozes, ogres, mephis, medusae, merfolk, shahagans, sprites, lamias, wyverns, will-o'-the-wisps, and wraiths. Milo saw the entirety of the prime material, as if he were examining every object, creature, and wisp of smoke with intense scrutiny. Milo saw the great wheel of the outer planes, the 16 infinitely large planes of Celestia, Biopia, Elysium, the Beastlands, Obora, Isgard, Limbo, Pandemonium, the Abyss, Kareshi, Hades, Ganesha, Baor, Arcanon, Mercanus, and Arcadia, arranged clockwise around the barren outlands, which from its heart rose the impossibly tall spire, ringed at its peak by Sigil, the city of doors. Milo saw the lower plains ripped apart by the never-ending blood war and the uncaring laughter of their thirsting gods. Milo saw the inner planes of air, fire, earth, water, positive and negative energy from which the multiverse itself was made. Milo saw the astral, ethereal, shadow, and elusive mirror transitive planes and the madness of the far realm. Milo saw the multiverse in its entirety, and it was all his. Milo saw himself with an infinitely high level in every class and prestige class, with every feat worth taking and many good that aren't, with infinite ranks and infinite skills, with infinite ability scores and infinite ability modifiers, with infinite hit points, infinite spells per day, and every spell known, lounging on what, at first glance, appeared to be an intricately carved throne of very precious metal and expensive material, and gemstone that Milo had ever heard of, and several others that he had not. But upon closer inspection were, in fact, epic magic items and artifacts. Milo saw a backrest composed of dozens of Staff of the Magi, sitting on piles of rings of universal energy immunity and bracers of relentless might. One armrest was simply the axe of the dwarvish lords, while the other appeared to be the great battle axe of Heronius himself, sitting on a pile of the 6 weapons of his archenemy Hextor. Milo, the most powerful character conceivable, lounged on his terrible throne, staring at his gauntleted hand. In some detached part of his brain, Milo realized it was nothing less than the iron gauntlet of war. An expression of detached ennui on his blank face. In his other hand, he idly spun the golden dragon orb around his fingers, one of the most powerful artifacts in creation, reduced to a mere stress ball. Who has any need of an orb of dragon kind, even the most powerful one, when Milo could simply rewrite reality to create a breed of better dragons, forced to bow to his very will? Milo had no enemies, for they had long been since defeated. He had no adventures to undertake, for there were none of an appropriate encounter level. He had no friends, for he needed none. He had no dungeons to raid, for he had the multiverse in his inventory. He had no familiar, for they could be traded for more powerful alternate class features. He had no party members, since it's impossible, in the impossible event that he would need allies, what would be more powerful than a simulacra of himself? The Milo in the mirror had everything he'd ever wanted, everything he'd ever seen, everything he'd ever heard of, everything he'd only conceived of. Milo, the real Milo, wasn't sure when he'd started screaming. He felt hands, the detached part of his brain that kept noticing minute details, even in impossible situations, noted that it must have been Ron and Harry, not that the rest of him cared. Struggling to pull him away from the mirror, but even as they dragged him away from it, he couldn't summon the willpower to tear his eyes away from that horrible visage. Eventually, one of them wrapped the cloak of invisibility around the artifact, and the vision stopped. But the memories remained.
What the bloody hell was that?
Ron said, his face pale and bloodless. I saw everything, Milo said weakly. He tasted blood in his mouth. He must have bit his tongue at some point. And it was mine. I had everything except a reason to... He trailed off, his brain still not fully functioning.
Reason to what, mate?
Ron asked nervously in an odd, falsely cheerful voice. Anything, Milo said. No reason to anything.
Look on the bright side,
Ron said.
If that's the future, it meant we beat you-know-who.
You-know-who? Milo asked, his voice full of concern. The me in the mirror could have vaporized you-know-who with silent, stilted, heightened, maximized, empowered, intensified, twinned, explosive, quickened cantrip just by willing it to be so.
But that's good, isn't it?
I imagine it would get dull after a few eons, Milo said, still trying to shake the horrifying images in the mirror had shown him. It had really shown him the future? What were the rules that governed it? I'll need to take another look, Milo said, eventually staggering to his feet. He spat blood on the floor of the classroom and wiped at his mouth with an even grimier robe.
No,
Harry said firmly.
Absolutely not.
I need to know how it works, Milo said. I need to know if that's really the future.
You're not going anywhere near that thing,
Harry insisted. Fine, Milo said sharply. Then one of you two give it a close examination and tell me if you see anything weird. Look at the frame and try not to get sucked in. Not even Milo was sure if he meant that last bit literatively or figuratively. I'll even close my eyes, see? 'Cause I don't, on account of my eyes being closed.
I'm not taking the invisible cloak off until you're out of the room or blindfolded,
Harry said stubbornly. With growing irritation brought on by his numerous injuries and conflicted feelings about his vision in the mirror, Milo muttered a few choice oaths as he fished a scarf out of his belt of hidden pouches and obligingly tied it around his face. Can we get on with it now? He snapped. And then he took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. Sorry, he said eventually, picturing their hurt expressions. I'm still kind of in a bit of shock from the mirror thing and yesterday's thing. And then he realized what he was doing and his breath caught. Damn it, I shouldn't have to care about your feelings. Let's just examine the mirror and get this done with already. Milo heard a rustling of cloth as, presumably, the mirror's cloak was lifted. There was silence as Ron and Harry were, hopefully, diligently examining the mirror's border and not being absorbed by its eldritch powers.
Oi, Harry, look at this,
Ron said.
Yeah, I saw it.
Harry said.
Just looked like a load of gobbledygook to me. Nah, it doesn't look anything remotely like gobbledygook.
Could one of you tell me, pray, what it is you are speaking of? Milo asked.
There's some writing on the mirror,
Harry said.
But it's nonsense.
There were a number of ways Milo had available to transmute nonsensical writing into its sensical variant, but all of them required that he be able to actually see the words in front of him. Write it down on some parchment, Milo said. Make sure you get it exactly right. Does it use the common alphabet? English. The English alphabet?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Fortuitous. Shouldn't be too hard, then. Milo heard the unbuttoning of a school bag and hurried scratching of a quill before a piece of parchment was placed in his hands. Milo very carefully turned so he was facing away from the mirror and removed his blindfold. Written on a small scrap of parchment was, in Harry's scrawl, something that I can't read. Milo stared at it for a moment, but concluded it wasn't in a language he recognized. Comprehend languages, he cast, a spell which allowed him to understand any written and spoken language. To his faint surprise, the writing remained completely nonsensical. The only conclusion was that it had to be a code of some form. I'll have to do this the good old-fashioned way, Milo muttered. He'd been habitually placing skill ranks into Skypher script every level because it was intelligence-based, and understanding ancient runes seemed the sort of thing a wizard ought to be able to do. But he hadn't actually had a chance to use them before. Nevertheless, inconsequential problems such as never having tried to decipher anything before did nothing to prevent the fact that, by any standard, Milo was very nearly an expert crypto-analyst. Milo was a little excited to finally have the opportunity to put his skills to use, testing them against the no doubt formidable defenses of this accursed mirror. He cracked his knuckles and stretched, pulling out a few sheets of parchment and his quill. It was time for some serious, heavy-duty script deciphering. It's backwards, he said, sounding somewhat disappointed. I show not your face, but your heart's sick desire.
Your heart's sick desire?
Said Ron skeptically.
That sounds sort of racy, to be honest.
No.
Maybe it's confused.
Harry mused.
Because we haven't got any heartsick desire, so it just showed us whatever we wanted to see.
But...
So you reckon that the mirror just showed us whatever you want?
Ron asked, impressed.
Clever, Harry.
Milo simply groaned and seriously contemplated applying his forehead directly to a very inviting-looking, hewn stone wall when a thought struck him. The mirror shows you your heart's desire, he thought, even if you don't already know what it looks like Harry's parents or my entire multiverse. Milo's face broke into a wide grin. He saw an exploit. All I have to do is figure out how to change my heart's desire, he realized, and I can see whatever I want. Ron, however, was developing an increasingly worried look.
There's something my dad always says, he said. How'd it go? All right, never trust anything that can think for itself if you can't see where it keeps its brains. Mine have gotten some right peculiar looks from his forward angular now and again. It seems perfectly friendly.
Infinite power may be my long-term goal, Milo thought, although to be fair, I'm starting to seriously reconsider that. Well, within reason anyways. But what I really want, right now, more than anything else, is to find out what Voldemort is up to. Yep, honest, that's what I want. Show me, mirror, Milo said quietly, and turned around. As a precaution, he readied an action. Look away if it shows me anything other than the information on you-know-who. You can't back down from a readied action. He winced in almost physical pain as he was given yet another infinitesimally short view of the multiverse and his own horrible fate again.
What are you doing?
Harry asked.
Don't look at that thing.
No, trust me, Milo said, clutching his aching forehead. I know what I'm doing. Sort of. Okay, so maybe I really don't care that much about the Dark Lord after all. How about something a little smaller? I want more than anything to see what Kelgor's firebolt looks like written out in his spellbook. That was sort of true, in fact. He had just decided, after all, that it would be the next research project. If he could somehow finagle the mirror into showing him what to write in his spellbook, he could save a week's worth and 1,000 gold pieces. When Milo turned around again, it was with enough presage to fill a Type 2 bag of holding. Unfortunately, the mirror once again saw through his mental tricks, and he was treated to a view of Mirror Milo killing time by covering every square inch of the prime material in arcane marks. I'm getting away from this thing, he said, flinching and attempting to look anywhere other than at the nightmare being played out on the glass. The mirror never mind. I'm going to go back to bed. He'd been about to say the mirror, it's evil, but it clearly wasn't. It was absolutely, brutally, horribly neutral. It showed you what your heart desired, but sometimes what you desire isn't the same thing as what you desire that you would desire. If that makes sense. As Milo walked back to the hospital wing, his head off in space, he suddenly had another idea. I wonder if someone here can bewitch me to desire nothing more than the spellbook entry for Kelgor's firebolt, he mused aloud. Or other spells, for that matter. Morty, remind me to ask Hermione, okay? Thanks. Milo's familiar poked its furry head out of his extra-dimensional belt and nodded. Maybe it was simply an unusually good roll, or maybe it was the +2 bonus to spot and listen granted from his bond with Morty, but Milo suddenly felt as if a white dragon were breathing down the back of his neck. Morty's ears perked up, suddenly alert. Milo knew not to look around stupidly and say, "Hello, Ron, is that you? Harry, this isn't funny, guys," followed by the inevitable, "Ah!" as whatever it was hiding out there ate his face. Instead, our gallant hero simply licked his suddenly dry lips and walked forwards as casually as he could manage. Cursing himself for leaving the cloak of invisibility with Harry and Ron, Milo reckoned his best chance was to wait. Harry and Ron. Patting his pockets as if he'd forgotten something, Milo cursed in a somewhat overdramatic fashion. Not having any ranks in disguise or bluff, Milo was a terrible actor, and he started to return to the room with the mirror. Whatever it was that had triggered Milo's spot check, if that was indeed what it had been, had easy access to those two, who, while still being relative novices at this plane's particular branch of magic, were nearly defenseless. Equally importantly, Milo didn't particularly want to face it alone in his current state. While turning around and searching his pockets, Milo had a chance to look around the corridor, which remained empty save for the obligatory suits of armor and statues. Milo considered casting See Invisibility, but remembered that he had seemed to have no effect, oddly, on whatever it was that Snape had used to hide himself in his office before the Quidditch match. Detect thoughts, Milo muttered under his breath. Mere invisibility would be of no use against the spell, which revealed the presence, and if he concentrated on it long enough, the number of intelligent, conscious creatures in a cone emanating from Milo. The spell immediately alerted him that he was right. Something intelligent was standing within 60 feet of him. Milo forced himself not to look around nervously, waiting for the spell to cough up how many people, or blood-sucking monsters, were there skulking around him. When it finally did, Milo was so surprised that it almost broke his concentration on the spell. He'd thought there would be 1 or 2 at most, sneaky persons and or blood-sucking monstrosities for him to glitter dust and run away from. Within the fairly narrow conical field of detect thoughts, Milo detected the seemingly empty corridor, no less than 12 creatures.
12 sentient creatures.
12 sentient, potentially going to eat Milo's face, creatures. And that was the end of Chapter 20, The Mirror of Erised, because this author loves to end chapters on cliffhangers.
What you're supposed to do to keep people reading.
It succeeds! We are going to take a quick water break, because my voice, oh my god.
Oh, he disturbed the floof.
I'm sorry for disturbing the floof, but he keeps pawing at my toe.
Yeah, he's been doing everything he can to distract things. I need a Floof Cam.
Look at this floof!
Just so you guys have an idea of what we're dealing with here. Besides my grumbly stomach, this is what is at our feet.
This floof. Right here.
This floof.
This floof.
I swear it is alive. See, the tail moved. It's alive. It's not a floof skin rug. Oh, the paw. Okay, and back to our regular scheduled program.
You're so cute. Why must you be so cute? Chapter 21, Bewitched.
You reckon we should go after him?
Harry asked.
In a minute.
Ron said absently, still staring at the mirror.
It's just...
Harry said.
I don't know. He seemed a bit, well, off. I'm sure he's fine.
Ron said, making a vague gesture.
Looking into a mirror that shows your heart's desire and screaming your head off doesn't seem particularly fine to me.
Harry said with growing certainty.
And, I mean, he's injured and all.
Hey. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Hey.
Ron said, suddenly alert.
What do you reckon Hermione would see in here? Herself with a load of the world's dullest books, probably? Still, we should probably show her when she gets back. And what about Fred and George?
Harry looked at Ron, his eyes narrowing.
So you think we should show a bunch of people?
Harry asked neutrally.
Don't know.
Ron shrugged.
Just wondering what they'd see is all. What about Neville? Bet it'd be him with no bandages holding a remember-all that's completely dim, eh? Or, in Transfiguration.
No way, Harry thought. Could Milo have been right about the mirror?
I think,
Harry said slowly,
that we should go talk to Dumbledore. Or McGonagall. What, really?
Ron asked, as if Harry had just suggested they jump into a pit of venomous snakes.
Yeah,
said Harry.
I reckon the mirror, it's like Milo said. It's making you want to go and get other people to show it to.
The last several words spilled out all at once.
What?
Ron sputtered.
Need I remind you that he also nicked the contents of everyone's trunks because he thought they were, and I quote, treasure chest. He's off his rocker. When I saw the mirror, the next thing I did was to go get you two, and now you want to go get other people. It's just like he said. I was just wondering what they'd see is all.
Ron said defensively.
And anyway, it's not like it's a crime, is it? It's a fun mirror. I mean, it's not like I was seriously considering it. That's so? Or is the mirror making you say that? If I was being possessed...
Ron said firmly.
I'd know about it. I didn't know when it made me show it to you.
Ron rolled his eyes.
Look, say you're right, and it's a big, dirty, evil magic mirror that's controlling me with the big, dirty, evil magic mirror powers.
Ron said patiently.
If that were true, and it isn't, but if it were, then we wouldn't be having this dumb conversation because you'd be controlled by its big, dirty, evil magic powers also.
Harry frowned for a moment, and then a thought struck him.
No,
he said excitedly.
Because he used protection from evil on me, remember? The mirror can't influence me. But we have to find a teacher before it wears off. Can you remember how long it lasts? I can't. This is mad.
Ron said exasperatingly.
We're just getting jumpy because of Hannah and convinced everyone's possessed whenever they do anything. This time tomorrow, someone will suggest we go get breakfast and everyone will be all, ooh, he's possessed. Let's go run to Dumbledore. Or he said he was going to the loo. He must be possessed. That's what you would say if the mirror was controlling you.
Harry insisted.
It's also what I'd say if I thought you were becoming an increasingly annoying, paranoid git.
Ron said, losing his patience.
Just saying. Let's just go find him and go to McGonagall, okay? I mean, what's the worst that could happen? That we all get eaten by spiders in the hallway? Obviously.
Ron said.
But fine, let's go. If it's the only thing that'll shut you up about this. Now, where do you reckon he is?
Where who is? Asked a new voice. Harry and Ron turned, shocked to find Milo leaning calmly against the doorframe to the classroom.
You?
Harry said while Ron said,
What are you doing here?
What are you lot fighting about? He asked, ignoring Ron's question entirely.
So Paranoid here reckons we've both been bewitched.
Ron said.
And wants to take us to McGonagall.
Milo snorted dismissively. Lead on then, he said. Not that it will accomplish much. That's practically impossible to detect.
1 second.
Harry said.
Just going to grab the cloak.
Milo raised an eyebrow briefly as Harry shoved his invisibility cloak into his school bag, but said nothing.
Right, let's go.
Harry said, just shouldering his bag and heading to the door.
And both of you stay in front of me.
He added.
Just in case.
As they walked to McGonagall's office, Harry kept a firm grip on his wand. He wasn't sure just how much power, if any, the mirror had over them, but decided not to take any chances.
Hey, mate.
Ron said anxiously as they rounded one of the last corners to their destination.
Not really sure how to tell you this, but your magic belt thingy seems to be acting up.
Ron gestured to Milo's belt, which, now that he was looking closely, Harry noticed did indeed seem to be acting up. One of the 10 small pouches was wiggling around as if something inside was trying to get out. It does that sometimes, Milo said with a shrug. It's nothing that need worry you.
Oh.
Said Ron.
It's just, I never noticed it before. Isn't that where you keep your rat?
Harry asked shrewdly. He'd seen the furry little animal poking its head out of the belt occasionally to look around. In fact, he didn't think he'd ever seen the buckle on that particular pouch done up before. Nope, Milo said blithely.
Oh, okay.
Harry said as if it were nothing. Something weird's definitely going on, he thought. Best get to McGonagall as quickly as possible.
Still, can't believe I'm voluntarily walking into McGonagall's office.
Ron muttered.
Again, what would Fred and George say?
Harry expected Milo to make a quip about just how voluntary, or rather involuntary, Ron's trip to the deputy headmistress' office really was, but Milo remained silent, staring straight ahead with his shoulders set. It felt like it took ages, but in reality, it was only a 4-minute walk or so from the abandoned classroom to their destination. Harry rapped quickly on the door 3 times, not taking his eyes off Milo. Oh, this is a female voice, I guess. Come in, Harry heard.
Right.
Harry said, gesturing with his wand, although in truth he didn't know any spells offhand that he would use on them anyways.
You two go first and leave the talking to me. You're mad, mate,
Ron muttered and pushed the door open. Misters Potter, Weasley, and Anastasia Liadon, McGonagall said, raising from her chair. What seems to be the matter? Why are you holding your wand? And you, shouldn't you be in the hospital wing?
I think these two have been bewitched.
Harry started. Oh, come now, McGonagall said in a pacifying tone. Why would...
By a magical mirror, and so have I.
Mirror? McGonagall asked sharply, suddenly alert. Explain everything on the way. Let's go.
Where are we going?
Ron asked as McGonagall stepped around her desk to the door. To see the headmaster, of course. This nonsense about bewitchment aside, I need to talk to him about just leaving a certain powerful magical artifact where just anyone can bump into it. Despite the fact that she had dismissed Harry's concerns about mental control offhand, Harry noticed that McGonagall, who usually liked to stay at the front of any particular group, stayed a half step behind Harry, Ron, and Milo on the way to Dumbledore's hidden office, a fact which made it somewhat awkward for him to recount the events surrounding the mirror. McGonagall guided them down the Hogwarts' ever-shifting halls, through false walls, up some stairs, down some stairs, up some more stairs, took what Harry swore were 3 left turns at one point and still ended up somewhere different, until they eventually stopped in front of an ominous-looking gargoyle statue. While Harry hadn't ever been to this particular statue, he was fairly sure McGonagall had taken a deliberately circuitous route. Harry saw McGonagall's lips move, but a sudden ringing in his ears prevented him from hearing whatever it was that she said. Just as abruptly as it started, it stopped, and the gargoyle seemed to rotate upwards into a spiral staircase. Something about the way it moved seemed subtly wrong to Harry, but he'd seen enough magic to know not to analyze things too closely. Up you go, McGonagall said, and they trotted up the stone staircase to a heavy wooden door. McGonagall knocked politely on the door and waited.
Shouldn't we just go in?
Harry asked, impatient. He didn't know how much longer protection from evil would last, or if it had already run out.
This is urgent.
Neither is the Minister of Magic, Nicholas Flamel, nor even he who must not be named would dare enter the headmaster's office without permission. So we wait. Harry waited several uncomfortable seconds, tapping his foot impatiently against the ancient stone floor. Eventually the door simply swung open to let them in. Dumbledore sat behind a heavy oak desk, wearing a particularly eye-watering, multi-hued robe and his trademark half-moon spectacles.
I'm Minerva. What an unexpected surprise,
he said, looking genuinely pleased.
And I see you've brought guests. Is it tea time already?
No, it's not. It's...
My colleague, Professor Sinistra, assures me that due to the rotation of the earth beneath our feet, hurtling through space around the great smiling face in the sky that we can call the sun, it is always tea time. Somewhere, at least.
Well, be that as it may, I have a matter of some importance to discuss with you, McGonagall said, desperately trying to regain the initiative. It's about the mirror and something else as well.
I see,
Dumbledore said gravely, all appearances of a foolish old man suddenly gone. Harry had never seen the headmaster look so serious before.
Go on.
Perhaps it would be best if Mr. Potter explained, the deputy headmistress said.
Very well. What happened, Harry?
Dumbledore asked. As Harry nervously told his story, he noticed that Milo appeared to be sweating nervously.
So, in short, you think you're all being influenced by the Mirror of Erised?
Dumbledore asked.
Is that what it's called?
Harry asked.
It is indeed,
Dumbledore said.
And, it appears, I shall have to have it moved from its temporary home. If it will put your mind at rest, the mirror, while extremely powerful, does not have the ability to directly control the action of those who gaze upon it. Not to say that having their heart's desire revealed to them isn't a form of influence in itself. Oh.
Harry said, greatly relieved.
Still,
Dumbledore said.
You can't be too careful. I suppose if you would be so good as to wait here a moment without waiting... Oh, I missed the...
Without waiting for...
You want me to redo it?
No, that's fine.
Bye.
Without waiting for a reply, the headmaster stood up from his desk to walk over to one of his shelves of ticking silver devices on the wall.
Ah.
He said after rummaging about for a moment or two.
Here we are. I've always been meaning to try this one out.
Blowing what seemed to be generations of accumulated dust off of a complicated-looking spindly silver thing that Harry could only, in all honesty, accurately describe as a gizmo, Dumbledore returned to his desk and sat down heavily. He placed the gizmo on the polished wooden surface where it made an ominous thud that seemed much louder than an object of its apparent mass would make. It had spiky protrusions. It had bits that whirred around for no apparent reason. It had twists and turns and knobs and dials. It had what looked uncomfortably like a dentist drill, only more, well, eldritch. But headmaster, McGonagall began, looking astonished.
Not now, Minerva.
Dumbledore said, brushing aside whatever her protest was.
This,
he said to Harry, Ron, and Milo with a dramatic flourish,
is the Bewitcher of Destiny.
I'm sorry, McGonagall began.
Yes, the Bewitcher of Destiny. It's for, near as I can figure, revealing the presence of any form of magic that allows mental control, up to and including a certain unforgivable curse.
But detecting the Imperious Curse is all but impossible, Milo protested.
Indeed, without the Bewitcher of Doom, it is impossible.
Dumbledore agreed.
Wasn't it called the Bewitcher of Destiny?
Ron asked.
It's very versatile.
Dumbledore shrugged.
Now, who shall I use it on first?
As he spoke, he adjusted several knobs and dials on the device, which made its drill extension whir in an ominous fashion.
I'm not going near that thing,
Ron said stubbornly.
What would it do if we were, bewitched? Not that we are, of course. Well,
Dumbledore said, scratching his beard as in thought.
To be honest, I'm not completely certain. To the best of my knowledge, this dial here controls the severity of the Bewitcher's effect.
He said, gesturing to a particularly large, unmarked dial.
It goes anywhere from simply revealing the identity of the guilty party to having the earth itself rise up and swallow the culprit whole.
Ron gave a low whistle.
The only problem is, the dial is unmarked. Now, of course, the normal convention is for the dial to turn them to the left for the lower setting, but as I'm sure you can tell, the designer of this particular device was quite clearly bonkers. So, just to be safe, I'm turning it all the way to the right.
As he did so, the whirring of the drill end increased at a frightening pace, and parts of the machine were pumping up and down now at a rate that was shaking the floor.
Ah,
Dumbledore said.
See? Perfectly safe.
Harry swallowed nervously. Ron's face was white, and Milo licked his suddenly dry lips.
I'll go first,
Harry said. He'd rather do almost anything than go near that death trap of a machine, but he had to know if the mirror was controlling him. Also, it set a good precedent for Ron, and particularly Milo. Once he'd done it, and hopefully survived, they couldn't very well back out.
Then, if you would just place your palm here,
Dumbledore said, pointing at a flat disc on one of the Bewitcher's spindly arms. Harry complied, taking care not to go anywhere near the more dangerous-looking appendages. There was a tense second or two as Harry waited for the results. The machine didn't, as far as Harry could tell, give any sort of feedback, but eventually Dumbledore broke the silence.
Well,
he said,
it seems that you are, fortuitously, no less, or more, for that matter, yourself than you usually are.
Harry sighed with relief, collapsing into a nearby chair.
Now, Mr. Weasley,
Dumbledore said, turning to Ron.
If you would...
Ron gulped audibly, but put his now heavily sweating palm on the disc. To his relief, nothing happened.
See?
He said to Harry, pulling his hand away from the machine.
I'm fine, just like I said. And Mr. Anastasia Leodon.
Dumbledore said, turning to Milo.
It's your turn.
But I'm not possessed, he said stubbornly.
I'm sure you're not,
Dumbledore replied.
But nevertheless, your two friends were brave enough to try it. Surely you, as by your own admission a hero, would be willing to do the same?
This is pointless, he muttered. I'm sure we all have much more important things to be doing, especially you, Headmaster, as Supreme Mugwump on top of being the Chief Warlock of the Wizzigmont, than entertaining a boy's delusions. I mean, you yourself said the mirror can't...
You've got his title right,
Harry said suddenly. Sorry, what? Milo asked coolly.
You get everything's name wrong,
Harry said, backing away slowly. I don't...
You once called him the Supreme Muggle instead of Mugwump, and called the Chudley Cannons Cuddly. I've never heard you get two polysyllabic names right in the same sentence before.
Well, maybe I thought it was funny then, but now things are important.
You trapped Morty in your belt.
He was being unruly, Milo said defensively. He bit me, see? Milo peeled off one of his weird blue gloves to show a small bite mark between his thumb and index finger.
Maybe,
Harry said skeptically.
He bit you because you're bewitched after all.
I'm not...
Then put your hand on the machine and prove it,
Harry said. Fine, Milo snapped, and stepped towards Dumbledore's desk. He reached slowly towards the machine with four sets of eyes boring into him slowly. Just as he was about to place his hand on the disc, he spun around. Summon Hip...
No,
Dumbledore said quietly. There was no threat, no malice, and no particular volume to his words. He wasn't even holding his wand. Nevertheless, Milo blinked in amazement as his spell fizzled out in front of him. How did you... he began, then noticed the large number of wands pointing at him. Ah, he said. I see.
Invenerate,
Milo heard a voice say. In a panic, he rolled to the side and tried to stumble to his feet. Don't you dare! He was feeling dizzy. The whole material plane seemed to be spinning in a somewhat concerning manner, and everything more than a few feet away was an indistinct blur. He didn't envy his chances of succeeding in the requisite concentration check to cast a spell, given his current status.
I was just...
The voice said again. Inveneration, eh? Milo asked, trying to hide just how dazed he was. You can keep your 1d4 negative levels, if you please, and tell me what the hells is going on, or else, he finished lamely.
I think we've got him back,
Someone else said.
Blimey, you reckon?
A third voice said sarcastically. If 1d4 is a number, a female voice said sternly, then I shall eat my hat. I believe the word you were searching for was 14. Everyone stop trying to be witty, Milo said, his vision growing somewhat clearer. And give me a straight answer.
You were controlled by the Imperious Curse for an unknown duration by an unknown party.
The grandfatherly voice that Milo recognized instantly as Dumbledore said.
But we're discovered by your good friend Harry Potter, who, in a notably rare act of sensibility for a Gryffindor, immediately did the sensible thing and told the good deputy headmistress. 30 points for Gryffindor, Harry, by the way. In what, if I dare say, was a characteristic fit of quick thinking, I then managed to convince you, and more importantly, whomever was controlling you, that I could reveal the identity of your controller with this 1,500-year-old magical juicer. You were presumably ordered to attack us, and Minerva, regrettably, was forced to subdue you.
Oh, Milo said, as the memories slowly came back to him. The room was starting to stabilize, but Milo decided that he'd be perfectly happy staying on blessedly solid the floor for a while nonetheless. Then why did you try to cast Inveneration on me?
Enervate, Milo, not Inveneration.
Dumbledore corrected. Demons and Tahari, Milo shrugged, same thing.
While I have lived for quite some time and accumulated no small amount of knowledge of magic, I do not know of this Inveneration spell of which you speak. Fittingly, since I presume it is from your world. Invenerate, however, is a harmless, yet rather unfortunately named spell to wake up those rendered asleep or unconscious by magic.
Then why do they call it a word that means to suck the energy out of something? Milo asked curiously.
Everyone makes mistakes,
Dumbledore said with the slightest of shrugs.
I'm led to believe that some people at the Ministry are working on a functionally identical spell with a more appropriate name. But I digress. I don't suppose there's any chance that you can identify the culprit?
Sorry, Milo said. His vision had cleared to the point where he could clearly make out Dumbledore, Harry, Ron, and Professor McGonagall's faces. I was in the hallway near the mirror when I thought I noticed something. So I cast a spell that detects minds. It told me there were 12 sentient minds nearby, although I couldn't see any of them. Before I could find out more, I heard someone whisper Imperio, and then, well, you know the rest. Oh, speaking of, he said, unbuttoning the pouch that Morty was trapped in. Sorry, little guy, he said to his friend. It's okay now.
The minds that the spells detected,
Dumbledore pressed.
Are you quite sure they were sentient, as in human-level intelligent?
Milo said, trying to remember the spell description. Anything living that's as smart or smarter than a newt.
Could it have simply been the wall portraits?
Dumbledore asked.
I dare say the one that guards Ravenclaw's tower is a good deal smarter than a newt.
No, Milo said. Those are probably constructs, or magically animated objects, and therefore immune to the spell. So whatever they were invisible.
In fact, that is most unlikely,
Dumbledore said.
The ability to become truly invisible, at least in our world, is extremely rare. It is more likely that these 12 persons or creatures unknown were hidden with, say, a remarkably good disillusionment charm.
Oh, Milo thought. So that's why see invisibility only worked on the cloak. Go figure. One last question, Milo asked. Actually, make that 2 questions.
Very well,
Dumbledore said.
I will answer to within the confines of our earlier agreement.
The first. How did you interrupt my spell? I'd assumed our different types of magic were basically incompatible.
Oh, it was quite simple, really.
Dumbledore admitted.
I simply used magic of a different sort. I reasoned that since you once told me that you had worked and studied for your magic, rather than, say, being born into it, that it required a certain degree of mental fortitude and concentration to use, much like our magic.
So you just...
Over the years, I have acquired something of a reputation for myself. Most of it undeserved, of course, and I've found that a certain type of wizard, especially dark wizards, seem to believe me capable of almost anything. So I simply commanded you to stop, and you, believing I actually had the power to do so, complied.
What would you have done if it hadn't worked? Milo asked.
Dumbledore
said with a slight twinkle in his eye.
In that case, I would have done nothing.
Nothing? Milo asked, shocked. Then the hippogriff would have torn you to pieces.
I dare say not,
Dumbledore said.
Minerva would have stunned you well before you finished casting your spell. Now, as to your second question?
Right, Milo said. What the hells was that mirror?
The mirror of Erised,
Dumbledore said.
It shows the heart's deepest and, sometimes unfortunately, darkest desire. Nothing more and nothing less. I strongly urge you to put it out of your minds, for men have wasted away obsessing over it. Needless to say, it shall be moved to a more safe location as soon as possible.
Good idea, Milo said, remembering the disturbing images the mirror had shown him. Now, if someone will help me to the hospital wing, I'm going to stay there until I've made an amulet of protection from evil for everyone and their cousin. And that is the end of Chapter 21, Bewitched.
Missing chapters now completed.
Huzzah!
Huzzah indeed. And one more Floof Cam for everybody.
Floof Cam.
Floof. Oh, did you just kick him in the nose?
No, I barely touched him on the top of the head. Boop, 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 boop. Boop, 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 boop. Okay. Oh, they're cute. All right. Floof Cam away.
Floof Cam away.
All right. So, what did you think of the chapters that we read together today?
I like it. I was hoping the one voice I kind of wanted to do was Dumbledore. I will say that.
I'm glad you got to do some Dumbledore.
So I always appreciated that Dumbledore was involved in that. I did like the very British reference to it's always 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yes.
It's always tea time somewhere.
It's always tea time
It's very,
somewhere.
very British. I liked it
Yes.
a lot.
Yeah.
I liked it. It was a lot of fun. I do not envy you those 3 paragraphs. It was just a laundry list of everything.
It was listing off the entire material plane, so yeah, it was kind of long.
So I'm sure you're very, very glad you had to do that twice now.
Yeah, my voice is so happy.
Let's make sure the audio didn't record, and we'll have to do it a third time here.
Sweet gods. No, I don't think so. So, if you liked these videos and would like to find out more about the Rowan Reads or the other things that we do, Rowan Reads is live on Twitch on Friday nights at 8 p.m. Pacific time.
Here's a nice little banner for you to see it. Actually, it's 20 seconds long. Hold it longer.
All right, do you want to do the...
Actually, I cornered it, didn't I? So
Yeah.
just blew up all over me. I've got Twitch all over me.
All right. So, I completely lost my train of thought. It's gone entirely. What was I doing? The outro. I was doing the outro.
Yes.
If you would like to help support our channel, you can either follow us or be a subscriber either on YouTube or on Twitch. Also, we love patrons because patrons help make things like having the equipment to do things like this possible. So you can either become one of our patrons or you can purchase us a jittery beverage through Ko-fi. The links for all of that are in the description below.
I am now officially done with school, so we're hoping to bring a lot more forward, maybe a few different serialized little things that don't necessarily involve the Harry Potter, but are still fan-based, things like that. If you're interested in maybe seeing a He Said, She Said review of some of things, we've talked about doing that again, so let us know if you'd be interested in that. With the pincers.
With the comments. It's pointing at the comments. Yeah, so both scripted and unscripted content coming for you guys about all things generally geeky and nerdy because that's kind of how we roll.
And why not just make that this?
Yeah, why not? We had to figure out something to pivot to, so here you go.
Tell us what you think of our little impromptu studio here.
Yeah, please comment about anything here that you wish to comment about.
Our multiple camera setup.
Yes. All right, and as I've been ending all of my streams with Rowan Reads lately, if people can hate for no reason, then I can love for no reason. And so, love you guys to the moon and back. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you soon. Bye.